Very good morning to all, and I'm really happy to have Stephen Mesak as a resource person for today's program. And it is an intention come counseling program. I think you had a wonderful session earlier with him, and today is going to talk another topic on counseling. I welcome on behalf of Red Pond and Yellow Pond Research Center for today's program, the resource person as well as the participant. Over to you, Mr. Stephen.
Thank you, sir. Let me just share my screen. Okay. I hope my presentation is visible to all.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir. And so before we start today's session, I'd like to say that since I'm presenting the screen, I will not be able to see the chat section. So if you're having any doubts in between or something, we can maybe wait till the end of the session, and then you can ask me after I finish the presentation. Or if there are some issues with regard to technical aspects, you are not able to hear my voice or see the audio video, please unmute and someone can tell me. Okay. So today's topic is going to be ethics in the practice of counseling. So what are the ethics that are involved in the counseling process? So last session, I felt that we were lacking the amount of interactiveness among us. So I thought let's make this session interactive. So can someone tell me what is ethics? What is the first thing that comes to your mind when you are saying ethics?
So that is the rule we need to follow while doing this action.
Okay, very good. So if you're going to unmute and speak, please just mention your name before and so that I can know who's speaking. Okay. So very good. Ethics is basically the rules, as you have said. So ethics is nothing but the rules that are used to govern and properly conduct any process. So it is not only in counseling, but ethics is there in every aspect of our life, especially in the professional arena. So wherever there is a professional job or something going on, there will be something called as a code of conduct or ethics will be framed. So it is important that the persons who are practicing in this particular profession need to follow these ethics. So that, why are we following these ethics? Can someone tell me why do we need to follow ethics? You have told me what an ethic is, but why do we need to follow it?
So it's me, Vishal Mugan, sir.
Okay.
Sir, we need to follow ethics because it will give us a way to proceed that one clearly, that actions clearly. That is the rules, successful rules given by or structured by for that one, sir.
Okay, ma'am. So yeah, it is rules, ma'am. So it is there to help us to do that particular profession properly. Okay, fine. That is one aspect. What are the other aspects? Why will we be needing ethics? This is one point. This is a very valid point. Thank you, Vishal. So can someone else tell me what other points are there?
Morning,
why do?
sir, can you hear me?
Yes. Your name, please.
Archana.
Okay.
So the why we need to follow the ethics is something it tells what is good and right. I think it is a principles.
Okay. Yes, it is principles. Okay. And so it tells us what is good and what is right. So what is the right thing to do? Yeah, fine. What else is ethics all about? Why do we need ethics?
I think it is a practical guidelines.
Excuse me?
It is a practical.
One second. Please continue.
So I think it is a practical guidelines to our follow, so something that to be followed, and we come to know what is right and what is wrong.
Okay. Thank you. That is a very good, valid point. Next, someone else was saying.
Yes, sir. This is Anita here.
Okay.
It's actually to have a professional, gives you a guideline to establish a professional relationship with the client. Because this is to have a proper treatment plan later on. to make a proper diagnosis of the problem and to have a proper treatment plan. Just gives you a guideline regarding that. When you have certain ethics, when you follow certain ethics, I think that would definitely give you a proper direction to, formulate a better treatment plan.
Okay, very true. So as you have said, ethics, you've all given one point actually, wherein you are saying that ethics is basically a set of guidelines. Yes, it will help us to form the counseling and client relationship. True, and it is for us to be able to conduct whatever job or work that we are doing in a professional manner. Yes, and it tells us what is right and what is wrong. So anyone else, would you like to say anything other than this?
So Anita here again. It basically you have as a counselor, you need to have certain principles, and that when you have guidelines, you have a check over your own behavior towards the
Very
client.
good. Very good. So it helps us to keep a check on our own behavior towards the client. Yes. So ethics, as you have said, in one aspect, it is a set of guidelines that helps us to conduct the counseling process in a professional manner and establish a professional relationship between the client and the counselor. One second. Yes. So with regard to the other two points of why we require ethics is that one, it helps us to safeguard the client. Now, ethics are kept in place so that the client can be kept, so that the client is not affected in a negative manner due to counseling. We have seen in the previous class wherein we were talking about the essential skills of a counselor, and we kept on focusing that the counseling process should be happening such that no negative or harm befalls on the client. So these ethics help to protect the client as well. That is one important aspect of ethics. Ethics is not only about it is not only about just conducting the counseling process in a systematic manner, but it is also about offering legal protection to the particular client. But it doesn't only protect the client, it is also protecting the counselor. We were talking about in the previous session wherein there is a need to keep a professional relationship, and many times this professional relationship in a counseling process will be breached. We will have something called as transference and counter transference. We were talking in the previous session. Transference is when the client develops a non-professional relationship with the counselor. It can be one-sided. And counter transference is when the counselor develops a non-professional relationship or some kind of other non-professional feelings on the client. So there's this kind of they look they when it breaches that professional relationship, the ethics will help protect the client and the counselor in those aspects. It helps to prevent them from breaching that particular relationship. So that is what with regard to ethics is. So the first part is guidelines, the second part to safeguard the client and the counselor, and the third part is to establish a professional relationship and conduct the counseling process in a systematic manner. So there are a total of 16 professional ethics that we'll be going through today. The first ethic is that the counseling should be undertaken only with professional intent and not casually or in extra professional relationship. You may have heard, I don't know how many among you are psychology students or maybe have had experience in mental health counseling and psychology.
Sir, I'm a psychology student. Sorry, I'm Vishal Makan.
Okay.
I'm a psychology student, but I did not attended any counseling sessions, anything, sir. So I have no idea about it. I just read of it only, sir.
Okay, okay. So, Miss Vishal, I would have one question for you. The question is, in your family, have or maybe your friends, have they ever said that go and give counseling to this person? I think he needs counseling, or within family members itself, I think you should give counseling to this person. He's feeling a bit sad or something like that. Has it ever happened to you like that as a student?
Yes, yes, sir. Actually, one of my friend's son, they wanted to take him to the counselor because he is not studying well and he is not memorizing. He can't memory anything. So, and he is feeling very sad always. So, they want to take him to a professional, sir.
Ah, okay. No, they wanted to take him to a professional, but has anyone ever asked you to do the counseling?
No, sir. Sorry. No.
Okay. Anyone else? Any other students? Have you experienced this? You're very quiet.
Yeah, good morning, sir. I have
Yes.
done, I've tried in some cases.
Your name, please.
I'm fine, sir.
Payal. Okay. So Payal, has anyone approached you, your family members or your relatives, and saying, give counseling for this particular family member or relative? Has that
Yes, sir.
happened in your life?
Yes, sir. In this, especially in this COVID duration.
Ah. So generally, when we are taking this field of psychology or counseling, and once someone knows that we are learning counseling, they will say that come and give me counseling. That is the most common thing. And I have seen many of my friends. They will come suddenly and they will say, "I'm feeling very sad. I think you should give me counseling." And this is sometimes they may say it as a joke, but many times they are actually asking you for counseling. Now, maybe for many of you, this may be the starting of your career in psychology. But as you progress on and on, you will eventually see that many people, once they know that you are a psychologist, they will come to you and say, "You should give me counseling. I'm having some kind of depression or something like that." That is where, why I'm saying is that you should not engage in a casual or professional relationship. When you can never do counseling for your relatives, for your family members, for your friends. It may seem as a good idea, but it is not at all possible. For many of us, we would have taken up counseling so that we can counsel our family members or relatives or friends. We would have had that kind of opinion. If I study counseling, I can help my parents or family members. I can give them counseling, help them. But let me be frank with you, it is a very, very bad idea to do that, because counseling should be undertaken only with a professional intent, whereas in case of your friends or relatives or family members, you're already in a non-professional relationship. You are in a casual relationship with them. You're in a personal relationship with them, and to make that personal into professional is very, very difficult. It will be very difficult to maintain it. That is most important, which is why it is always good to have counseling, and people will seek counseling only in the persons that they don't know. For example, let me say that I had a friend. Okay, so this particular friend she was saying that she's feeling very depressed. So I asked her, why don't you talk to me? And but she was not willing to talk to me. And I understood when she said that it is different to like talk to your friend, and it is kind of like Suresh Kumar sir said in the first class of the psychotherapy about catharsis. So that was my intent, but then it turned out that she really needed counseling. It was only then that I had to refer her to another counselor with whom she did not have any personal relationship, because when you do counseling to someone, you tend to overstep that barrier or that gap, and you tend to get into very details, personal details, and so this may affect your friendship or your personal relationship with that person as well. That is why counseling should be always conducted with people who do not have any personal relationship among themselves, and we'll talk about this more on through the session. So the next thing, it is very important that contracts involving the client should be drafted, and it should be realistic and clear. Now, this is maybe a very new thing for many of you. Actually, contracts are the kind of things that you may have heard in the job place when you're going to a professional place where you're going to work in some kind of a company or an industry. Especially in the IT field, you would have heard that they have to sign a contract. Or maybe if you're going to contract means itself long-term basis, you have to work here. But in the counseling arena, contracts is basically, it's a kind of it's what you can call, it seals the deal between a client and a counselor. So the client will be instructed on all of the details about the counseling process, what they're going to do, and everything. And then there'll also be some details wherein you may have to reveal your personal details. You should cooperate with the counseling process, and there'll be a lot of other points which will be going on later on. And so all of these aspects will be drafted into the contract. And what's more, it will also be given like the charge, how much they're going to charge for this counseling process, the duration of the counseling process, and what other legal aspects will be involved. Everything will be drafted in the contract, and all of these things, it should be very realistic, clear, and simple for the client to read and understand. Generally what they do in the hospital setup, this contract is very much common. if you have admitted yourself in a hospital, that is also for very maybe for some kind of operation, or especially in the psychiatric hospitals, this contract is very much involved. What they usually do is they draft a contract in English at the top, and bottom there will be Tamil, and then they will have the client fill up their name, and then they have to read this and they have to sign at the bottom. So this contract is basically, it is legally binding the counseling process, saying that this counseling process is happening in a legal and a standard safe manner for the client, so that no in the future there will be no legal problems between the client and the counselor, because they can always show that I have the contract. So that is how it happens in the counseling arena. um, if I, for to give you a better example, if you have seen any medical dramas, or if you have not, like for example, there is a medical drama called the Hospital Playlist. Has anyone seen it? Has anyone seen Hospital Playlist? Okay, no one has seen Hospital Playlist. Please, if you have the time, take a look at Hospital Playlist. It is quite long. It is a series about doctors. Okay, so it is actually quite good. Why I'm saying is that the contracts are very much involved in that. The thing about what happens in that particular series and Hospital Playlist is that the doctor, before the whatever operation that they're going to conduct, they have to explain to the client the whole process. They have to say that this is what we're going to do. We're going to conduct this operation. These are the negative effects that may happen. You may have the following risks that may happen. The following benefits may be happening. This is the cost of the operation, and everything will be involved. It will take this much time and hours. And after instructing all of this, after giving what is called as an informed consent, then only they will get a signature, and only if you get that signature you can continue the process itself. So that is where the contract is very much important. But unfortunately, what happens in today's particular arena is that in India, especially in abroad, in other countries, people the people are very much literate, and the doctors also know that people will understand when they explain something, and so they tend to first draft the contract and then get the informed consent, and then only they will continue whatever treatment is going to happen. This is happening in both psychiatric and non-psychiatric practice, but also in counseling practice. But in our India, the problem is that there is a lack of following ethics, be in whatever treatment method. So generally in big hospital, in small hospitals, or in normal counseling centers, they do not many of them do not do a contract. They just give the counseling and then it will be finished. It is very much informal in nature. And also in the hospitals, they give the treatment, and at the end of the treatment they find it difficult to explain to the client and make them understand everything. So, and they also have that fear that the client will leave the treatment in between. They'll get scared and they will just say no to the treatment. So at the end of the treatment, after the treatment process is finished, they will get the sign from the client, and it is doubtful whether there is any explanation about like a prior explanation. There is no informed consent. After the operation, they'll just give it orally, and finally they'll get a signature just for legal safety. But that is that is actually offense. That is something that is happening in our not only medical field but counseling and everywhere in India. So this is something that as future counselors you should try to avoid. You should always give the informed consent to the client, and you should draft a contract. If they're not willing for it, it is fine. If they're not willing for the counseling process after seeing the contract, it is no problem at all. It is safe for you and safe for the client. Next, counselors take all the responsible steps to avoid harm to the clients as a result of the counseling. Due to the counseling process, there can be a lot of problems, because we are basically dealing with the mind of the client. Last session, someone had asked me that if that particular person, when we are going to bring up their past thoughts, I'm not sure who asked me that question. When we are talking to the client and then we are telling them to reflect on the past memories through reflecting questions. So when you're asking them reflecting
Me,
questions and
sir.
saying, yes?
It's me, sir.
Okay, man. So when you bring up those kinds of questions, the client, what will happen is that they will think about their past events, and then they will get up even more bad. The treatment process may be abruptly stopped, or some complication can come. The client who's going well for so long, when we bring up that particular memory, he will regress and go back to the first stage before the treatment process, he'll be very in a pathetic condition. It will harm the client or the treatment process. So the counselor should know when and where what to do, such that whatever they're doing, it will not harm the client. Even during the psychotherapeutic techniques, there were talks about giving before the aversion technique, or what is it, exposure technique. Before you give the systematic desensitization, and can't get the name. What was the other technique?
Flooding, sir. Flooding.
Flooding. Yes, correct. When you're giving flooding, you have to give them the proper relaxation techniques beforehand and then expose them to the stimulus. So that is when you're taking a reasonable step to avoid harm to the client. I hope you understand. So you're preparing clients for overcoming the next steps of the counseling, where you'll be going deeper and deeper into their mind and talking about more complicated, complex issues. So you should always keep the client prepared so that they do not harm themselves. So the counselor should take all the responsible steps to do that. Next, they should seek supervision or refer the client in situations which are beyond their competence. For example, you are taking care of a particular client, but in the initial stages, this counseling process may seem normal. It may seem like a normal family, a family problem between. It may seem like a normal couple problem between a husband and wife. But later on, when you go deeper and deeper into it, you will see that there are lots of other issues. The wife may be having some kind of clinical disorder or a personality issue, and you may not be equipped to handle this particular personality issue. Maybe you are, as a marital counselor, you are okay with handling marital issues, but when there is a clinical disorder that is brought into this, then you may need the help of a clinical psychologist. You may need to refer to a clinical counselor or a clinical psychologist. Or for example, a particular client is depressed, but what happens is that the client is not actually depressed, but this depression is because of grief process is when someone or something that you like has been lost, a person has died, you have lost your favorite job, something like that, and you are very much affected. Then it is called as grief process, and so you may need to refer that person to a grief counselor. You may when you are not equipped or skilled to conduct that particular counseling process, you may need to take supervision or support from another counselor, and you can maybe choose to continue the process, or you can what do you call it, refer the client to that particular specialized counselor. So that is what should be happening. So if you can take care of it, well and good. If you need help, you can always ask your supervisor or someone who's superior to you. Your superior will give you some suggestions, and then based on that, you can decide whether to take up the counseling process or not. This is very much evident in the medical field, wherein what happens is that there will be the chief head of the department for a particular department, or a chief doctor will be there, and below the chief doctor, there will be lots of interns or resident doctors. They'll be saying these are the doctors who are just very new or who are in the training period. So what happens is that whenever they're conducting any particular surgery or something, this chief doctor or the head of the department, that particular doctor, he'll be there with the surgery and supervise the process, whatever is going on. If there is any problem in the surgery, immediately they will call the chief doctor. He will come immediately and he will see and he will give the supervision, or he will take over. So the same way it should be implemented in the counseling. This is something that is happening abroad. When the particular counselor is not able to take up the counseling process, he will refer to a more specialized or specific person. If they require legal support, he will refer them to a legal aspects counselor, and it happens in a more of a cooperative arena. That is what happens. But in our country, what happens is that they tend to do it all on their own. They say that they can do everything, but at the end of the day, the result or the outcome will be very poor. So it is good to develop a great amount of network. That is why networking is very important, so that you know various different kinds of counselors and whom you can refer for which problem, and you can support each other. Next, counselors should promote client autonomy and encourage clients to make responsible decisions on their own behalf. Let me give you a disclaimer about this. When I'm talking about the client should be encouraged to make decisions, we are talking about indirect counseling. When you're going to have the particular topic on types of counseling process, then you will maybe learn that there is direct counseling and indirect counseling. So as we had talked in the last session, that under indirect counseling, which is also called as client-centered counseling, the client is responsible for making all the decisions, it is important that the counselor, he's doing only facilitative process. He will try to empower the client. So he's trying to make the client independent. He will give him all the required tools. He will give the client all the required um, um, training and skills that they require, that they need, and he will give them the choices. And the client has to make the decision how to use, when to use, which to use. You can give a guidance saying whenever you're feeling like this, you can use this process. Okay, but at the end of the day, it is the client who makes the decision. He only has to solve his own problem. You are just there to give him a support. Basically, to be more specific, the counselor, if for example, when you're riding a cycle, you can think of the counselor as the as your father or mother who is holding the cycle so that you can balance, or you can think of the counselor as the kind of the extra wheels that are at the side, the training wheels that they say. These, that is what the role of a counselor is. The counselor is not the driver. The counselor is rather the person who is helping you and supporting you so that you can drive through the problem or your personal issue. Next, this is very important. The counselor should maintain the professional boundaries. So client is in that side, counselor is in this side. That is why the client and counselor should not receive any gifts. Sometimes the clients, once they feel very happy, what they tend to do is they tend to give the counselor a gift and say, please take my gift. I feel very happy. But the counselor should not engage in any kind of relationship or take any gifts. And what's more is important is that the nature of the relationship should be very, very professional. Their relationship should exist only inside of the counseling period or duration or process. Why I'm saying, not saying counseling room. If the relationship is only in the counseling room, what happens if the client needs help outside and he cannot immediately come to the counseling center? So for that period or that particular duration when the client is taking up a counseling process, he is undergoing the counseling process or the counseling treatment, then wherever he is, he can contact you, and it should be of professional nature. He cannot call and ask you, hello, how are you, good night, good morning, have you had food? He cannot have that kind of conversations with you which are non-professional, but rather whenever he's having an issue or to update you about something, you have given him some kind of homework or activity to do at home, he can give you an update. Or whenever he is suddenly feeling suicidal ideations and needs someone to talk to immediately, then he can give you a call and talk to you. And it is always very good to have the counseling session in a face-to-face physical setting rather than over the phone. If there is no other option, phone call is fine, but it is always good to have it in a physical arena. So it is because it is very easy to maintain the professional boundary in a physical arena, because you can because it will be there that the client will know. Because for example, let me tell you, it is very common. The human psychology is that, for example, if it is a particular female that is calling you over the phone, and then that particular female voice, or if it is a male voice, the opposite genders, they may get attracted. So voice itself can be a very big issue, because in that particular time they'll be comforting you in that particular process. The role of the counselor and the client will be feeling comforted. So what happens is that they may develop something called as a transference or counter transference. The client may develop a particular relationship on the counselor may develop particular relationship in the client. So any of that can happen. Whereas in a professional arena, there is a face-to-face interaction, and the counselor is dressed in such a way that it is professional. He behaves in a professional manner so that the client will not get any ideas at all. He will not get any non-professional ideas at all. So it is very easy to maintain professional boundaries in a face-to-face setting. So if you are going to conduct counseling, and if you are a beginner, I would suggest please do it in a face-to-face setting. And after your experience, maybe you can go for it. Telephone counseling. Otherwise, you would need a very specific training for telephone counseling. So counselors should maintain the professional boundaries. Next, counselors should avoid any other relationship with their clients which can be detrimental to the therapeutic process. So that is what I'm saying. The client and counselor should not have any non-professional relationship. You cannot counsel your friend. You cannot counsel your family member. You cannot counsel maybe your husband and wife, husband or wife or child. You cannot counsel anyone like that, or your relatives. It has to be someone whom you do not know about. Because let me give you another point. When you're counseling someone that you know very well, judgment will also come in. Then your counseling process will not be non-judgmental, it will be judgmental, because you will always have this opinion, this person is like this only, he does not know anything. I know what is good for him. That kind of attitude may come, or you may know too much of his personal details, and you may be too much judgmental about him. So those kinds of issues can be avoided only if it is a non-professional relationship and the client is someone whom you do not know. And another thing is that the counselor should also not try to engage in any personal relationship with the client. You cannot be friends with the client during the process or after the process. It should always happen in a professional manner. Next, the counselor should maintain confidentiality. This is very, very, very important. Can someone tell me what confidentiality is?
Sir, it's me, Vishwas. It's maintaining secret of their words and all, sir. At any case, we can't say to others, sir.
True, very true. So as you said, counseling is, the confidentiality means that you're maintaining a kind of privacy. So you may have seen in WhatsApp there is something called as a we are some you were getting some updates recently about privacy and all of those kinds of things. It was becoming a very huge trend that WhatsApp is going to exploit all of our information. In those kinds of situations, there is no confidentiality. Whatever chat that we are doing, whatever personal things that we are doing, someone else is viewing it. The same goes on with Facebook as well. That is why a lot of huge cases were going on. But confidentiality is something that is very much important in the medical field because, for example, when it is a particular client who's undergoing a problem, he may not want others to know about him because when someone knows too much about you, they may start judging you. That is the general assumption. Very good. Let me give you a very, very practical example. Okay, when you're going to when you're entering into going to go marry someone or enter into a marital relationship, what happens is that generally everything they tend to say a lot of there is a common ideology that lots of lies will be said about the, especially in an arranged marriage, lots of lies will be said, and then after that only the husband and wife will be married and everything will be seeming so polished and neat, but only after the marriage they will know that there have been so many secrets inside. And one of those important things is that confidentiality. What I'm saying is that if that particular person knows that you're having a particular illness, let us say that the person who you're going to marry, your fiance, knows that you have this particular illness, then it will affect the reason why they choose to whether they will choose to marry or not. If they think that you're having some kind of illness or chronic illness or something, they may choose not to marry you, or it will change their opinion about you. That is a common ideology. Now, why I'm bringing this up here is that if something like that can happen, you have to understand that I'm talking only about marital relationship or in the marriage process over here. Now think about your job where you're working. Think about other aspects of your life and in your personal life as well. In the abroad, what happens is that they have this kind of setup where if you're an ex-convict, that is, you have conducted a particular felony, you have conducted a particular crime, and you have been imprisoned in jail, and now you're brought out of jail. Okay, so when you're brought out of jail, what happens is that you will have to go back into day-to-day life, right? So the government has some particular schemes that will allow these ex-convicts who are good natured, who have become a better person, to get a good job. Now, what happens is that there is a confidentiality. The government also maintains a confidentiality, and the particular only the HR of the company will know that he is an ex-convict. Otherwise, none of the employees will be known about the that he is an ex-convict, that he has committed a crime and been to jail before. That is called as confidentiality. That is why in the psychology arena or in the HR, where the HR also learns psychology, you have to maintain confidentiality such that your personal details are not linked, they are not released, because if people know that you are an ex-convict, they will have a negative assumption about you, right? Similarly, when they know that you have had depression, when you have had suicidal ideas, when you have made a suicidal attempt, when you have a personality disorder, when you have some major clinical disorder like schizophrenia or mood disorder, something like that, then people's opinion about you will change. And that is why the counselor should always maintain a confidentiality regarding the client's personal and counseling process details. He should not reveal it to anyone at all, even if it is the client's parents, even if it is the client's spouse, anyone, provided that the client is in a sane mentality, provided that the client is capable of taking care of himself, provided that the client is in a conscious manner. If the client is not attached to reality, where in a clinical disorder like schizophrenia or something like that, the client will not be able to take care of himself. In those kinds of situations, you will look at his caregiver, who is his primary caregiver, and you have to tell the caregiver all the information so that he can take care of the client. Similarly, if it is a child, if it is an adolescent, I mean before 18 years old, that kind of in that age limit, the parents will have all the rights, or the legal guardian has all the rights to know about the particular child. But if it is a major that we are talking about, then they can choose who they want to tell this information or not, whether you want. And if you're going to reveal it to anyone, you should always ask their permission. The particular client, you should ask the permission to reveal any information. This is what confidentiality is all about. So you should be very, very careful not to leak the information about the client. And even if you're going to bring it up in some kind of some forums, there will be forum meetings where the many professionals will gather, and they will take up a case study and talk about it. They used to change the name of the client and some of the other important personal details, so that the client's identity remains unknown. Next, yes, in exceptional situations when confidentiality has to be broken, attempts must be made to seek the client's permission. As I said, in case of children or minors, then this confidentiality thing doesn't necessarily apply, because you have to look at their legal guardian and parent, and they are in charge of this particular client. That is one aspect. What if it is a legal case, okay? And now the government, the judiciary, they want to get this information, the medical records of the client, and they want to review it because the client is involved in some particular legal issues or cases. And that kind of situation also, you must ask the client's permission. Always, if you want to break the client's, if you want to inform this to to someone, you should always tell the client saying, can I tell you are not able to take care of yourself, so can I reveal some information, this particular information only, to maybe your spouse or to your child, so that they can better take care of you. This is especially in the case of suicidal ideas. If the particular person is a major and he's having lots of suicidal tendencies, you should always ask the client and then inform his parents. But if he's a very much risky person, then you can always that is also included in the contract. All of we'll go into the suicide aspect later on. But if it is a very high risk situation, then you can breach. You don't need to ask the client's permission. You can directly tell the parents about it. Okay. Now, as back to the legal aspect. When it comes to the legal aspect, sometimes you do not need to ask the client's permission. If the particular person is a huge criminal or something, and he is having some kind of mental trauma or something, and you are the counselor, if the judiciary is asking for you, the legal Indian government is asking for you, you can definitely reveal the information about the client, and only the necessary information should be revealed. The other information that they do not require for the case should be redacted, so it should be removed. Agreements about confidentiality continue even after the client's death. Even after the client has passed away, the confidentiality should continue, unless unless there are overriding legal considerations. Unless legally they are approaching that this information of the client should be disclosed, the confidentiality will continue even after death. So even after the client has passed away and his parents ask, you cannot tell the parents that this is what the client told me and everything. Even if the spouse asks, you cannot tell them at all, because confidentiality continues even after the client's death. Counselors should not exploit the clients, past or present, in any financial, sexual, emotional, or other means. So it is important that it is very, very important that the counselor should not exploit them in any other financial means. You should not ask them lots and lots of money during the counseling process or in between, or after the counseling is finished. You cannot say that I gave you counseling that day, gave me some money, or for sexual purposes also, you cannot do that. So and even emotional, you cannot even go and cry to a client, because that is what they're saying. No non-professional relationship should be formed. Sexual relationships are never acceptable. When a client is incapable of giving the informed consent, the counselor should obtain consent from a legally authorized person. So in case of children, it will be the parents, And if the person is not if the person is having lack of insight, that is he does not know that he has a problem itself, then you can ask the legal guardian. It can be the wife. That is what is happening in the clinical setup. The patient has a kind of clinical disorder. They will not generally know that they have this disorder, especially in the case of schizophrenia or mood disorder, stuff like that. So in those kinds of situations, you have to inform their legal guardian, because they will take care of them and they can give the informed consent. So counselor should not accept or offer payment for referrals. Yes, the counselor should not accept, even if you're referring a client, you're not able to take up that particular case, or you want to refer them for a more specific reason. You should not accept, you should not say that I'm going to charge for referrals as well. We are not a kind of agency where we will be charging for referrals. This is a counseling process where you are having to help the client, and all the referrals are part of your duty. If you're not able to take away, it is your obligation to refer the client to someone who is more capable or more competent in taking care of the client. You are morally obligated to do it. Next, or you cannot engage in any transactional financial transactions apart from negotiating the ordinary fee. So, as we it said in the beginning of the counseling contract. In the counseling contract itself, whatever fees you're going to charge, the duration, all will be given. You cannot exceed that particular fee. That is what we are trying to say. Next, if a counselor makes an attempt to make a relationship with a former client, he should seek supervision. Now, in case one way or the other, you have not been able to stop the counter transference, and you have formed a relationship with the client also wants to form a relationship with you. You can no more take up the counseling process, because whatever professional relationship you have had has become personal. In that kind of situation, you should always refer the client to another counselor. And before you're going to engage in this kind of relationship, you should always ask your supervisor. You should seek their supervision. You should inform them beforehand itself, so that they can explain to you about the legal aspects and whatever aspects that are required, so that this particular relationship does not affect the well-being of the client, and it does not also affect the counselor. Any publicity material and all written and oral information should be accurately reflecting the nature of the counseling service. So that is why the contract should be very simple and realistic, and it should be very accurately showcasing whatever services that you're going to do. Because you may have heard, I'm not going to name the particular institution, but there was a long time back, I think about 4 or 5 years back, there was one particular college. They were giving their advertisements. Lots of celebrities are endorsing this particular college. They said that if you come and learn catering or other food sciences related things from us, we will give you 100% placement, stipend, and all of that. You see, that is where their publicity material was very hi-fi. But in the reality, when you ask the students, they said that nothing like that has happened for us. And then there were lots of case and court issues going on with regard to that particular institution. So similarly, in the counseling process, whenever we're going to give a publicity material to the client, and we're going to say this is all that we're going to do, we are offering these services, we should be accurately capable of offering the service. If you're not able to do it, do not mention it. If you're not going to do it, do not mention it. So whatever you're going to do, it should be properly or orally informed to the client. So these are the 16 ethics that are involved in the counseling process that will help to regulate the counseling process. It will help guide the counseling process, safeguard the client, and safeguard the counselor. Now, the last aspect of today's session, there are certain essential skills. These essential skills are very much important um, in order for the client, for the counselor to maintain the ethics. So if they want to maintain the ethics in a proper manner, they should have these essential aspects. What are they? These are not only skills, there are skills as well, and then there are some kinds of other aspects as well. The first one is competence. Now, one of you, and I remember very well in the last session, you had said that shouldn't the counselor know all the ethical and legal aspects regarding the counseling process? He should know that that is also an important skill. That is also an important knowledge. That is what we call as competence. So all this awareness about the ethics in counseling, the counseling process and everything, it is called as competence of the counselor. It is also a part of competence. Competence is not only the ethics. He should not only know all of these legal ethics in counseling, but he should also be capable of giving the counseling. He should be experienced in counseling, have the knowledge, have the skills. He should show the particular professional behavior he should be able to deliver the good performance, and he should have realistic achievable goals. The counseling process should be goal oriented, it should not be haphazard. That is what we're trying to say, because counseling should be systematic. So if a counselor is able to do all of this and follow the ethics and properly know the ethics and update himself regarding the ethics, he's called as a competent counselor. Next, self-awareness. We had also talked about the importance of self-awareness. Why self-awareness? Last session also we talked a lot about this. The counter transference, especially that he may have a non-professional relationship with the client. So even in that aspect, the self-awareness is very important. It is also important because when you are self-aware of about what is happening, whatever words you're using, you can properly maintain or follow through the ethics. You will not mention any non-professional terms. You will it will be very structured and careful, and you will be very careful in the words you're using, very careful in whatever technique that you're going to use for the client. Because as you had said, we had also talked about that you have to prepare the client so that he does not get any harm due to the counseling process. Only if you're self-aware, you will know all of this, and you will be keep on constantly planning so that the counseling process can be very much beneficial for the client. And next up is the informed consent. We had already talked a lot about it. So the informed consent is very much important, and wherein you will be explaining everything: how much amount is involved, what is the duration, what is the process, what you're going to do, what are the objectives, what are the disclaimers. These and this may be happening. You have to follow these issues, and then it will be legally drafted. And this is a proof, legal proof. So even if the client may falsely accuse you of something, or the counselor falsely accuses the client of something, or denies particular service, then they can show the informed consent and demand it. Next, termination. Yes, it is very important that the counseling process should be terminated, because you cannot keep on going this counseling process. It cannot keep on going on forever. There should always be termination, and there should be follow-ups. After you've terminated the counseling process, you should always follow up on the client, and eventually, gradually, that follow-up can be stopped. When the client is capable of living his life in a normal manner, then you completely stop. And all of this happens in a gradual manner. You do not suddenly stop the counseling process. You have to keep on following up on them monthly once, 3 months, 2 months once, 3 months once, 6 months once, once a year, and that's all. Then you finish like that. So after that, if the client needs your help again, he can always come back to you. So termination is very important, because the counselor will not be in the life of the client forever. The counselor should always prepare and empower the client to face his own problems. Documentation. We had already spoke about it during the skills topic. Documentation is very important. Whatever process is happening, it is helpful when you are going to refer the client, because the person who you are going to refer to, he cannot start the counseling process all over again. If you have collected data about the client and you documented it, he will read the data and he will be updated about it, and he can tell the client that, yes, I have gone through the particular documents, the report, the case study, and I have a very good idea about the counseling, about what has been happening in your life. He can go to the techniques, or he can ask what specific doubts that he may be having. It saves a lot of time. It's also useful in the legal aspects when you need to, in the court proceedings and all, they may be very scrutinizing it, closely scrutinizing it, and all of those aspects as well. No suicide contract. Now, this is very, very important. Now, what if the particular client is a client who is having depression, or he's a suicidal client, he has borderline personality disorder? Then you should always have a no suicide contract in your informed consent. So in the informed consent, when you're giving it orally and when you're also giving it in a written format and getting the client's signature in the contract, you should also mention this part as well. We are not doing this nowadays, but this is very important, that you will not, the client will promise not to harm himself from this period to this period. And if he is having suicide, he can call this particular helpline or the particular counselor. He will go to the particular hospital or clinic. He can contact the following people, and all of this are legally binding him to not commit suicide during the counseling process. Because if the client commits suicide during the counseling process, then the counselor will be afraid that the police and everyone will investigate him and say that you said something that made the client cause suicide. You can always show them the contract and say that the client was like this from the beginning. He read this, This was shown to the client, and also his caregiver. We had received this thing, and has been occurred in a legal and a proper manner only. So this will protect the counselor. So that is all with regard to today's session. Thank you, everyone. So any doubts? Oh yes, and before I complete, I would like to say that it is very important that you follow these legal aspects and ethical aspects in counseling. It is always a very black area, a gray area in the counseling process. No one follows the ethics properly, but these are very simple steps that you need to do to protect yourself and to protect the client. There's this song in Jungle Book. If you have, I'm very much into movies, and so I tend to relate whatever I study or teach with regard to movies. So in Jungle Book, there is this song, Bare Necessities by Balu. There's a bear called Balu that he sings that look for the bare necessities, the simple bare necessities. Forget about your worries and your strife. So these are very much bare necessities that you need to follow in the counseling process for it to be simple, and so that you don't have to worry and feel risky when you're taking up the particular counseling process. So, thank you. That is all. And to the host Suresh Kumar sir, and we can have the doubts right now, queries and doubts.
Sir, it's me, Vishal Mukund Singh. Sir, after finishing this session's doubt, you need to clear our doubt, one of the past classes doubt, sir. Freudian slip. You said no?
Freudian slip. Yes, ma'am.
Freudian, sorry. Sir, pronounce it once again, sir.
It is called as Freudian slip. You know Sigmund Freud, right? So
Yes,
he
yes.
talked about, yes. So I hope everyone has. If you're not having doubts, does anyone have any doubts regarding today's session regarding ethics in counseling? Okay, so then we can talk about Freudian slip. I think I'd given an activity to everyone that you should give an example, real life incident of Freudian slip in your life. So can you tell me? I don't want internet examples. I want a real life incident where you have used Freudian slip.
Sir, I have an example, but I don't know it is correct or wrong. Actually, I used it to fill my son's snacks boxes and water bottle the day before itself. Even it is a Sunday, by forgettingly, I will fill up the that one. I don't know this is right or wrong.
Okay. Actually, Freudian slip is basically, it is a word where we are pronouncing a particular word unconsciously without our own knowledge. That is what Freudian slip is all about. You know, Sigmund Freud talks about conscious and unconscious mind and all of those aspects. Unconsciously, we'll be having some kind of particular thought process going on in our mind. And suddenly, we will be thinking about it unconsciously, it will come out in our word. For example, that particular class itself, I think I was reading a reference, REFERENCE, but then reference a reflection. I was reading a reflection, and unconsciously I was thinking about the word relationship, and suddenly it came out as relationship. That is a kind of Freudian slip. Sometimes what happens is that we may be wanting to talk to our, we would have been talking to a friend, and suddenly we say appa or we say some other name to that particular friend. That is a kind of a Freudian slip. We'll be unconsciously thinking about someone or something, we will blurt out their name. So that is what Freudian slip is all about.
So the slip of then it won't do actions. It's only for the.
It's a slip of tongue. It's a slip of tongue or a word.
So my mother used to call my son and my Anna's son. He will get confused. He will come like that. Okay.
So suddenly, you will then only after that you will think, oh sorry, I said mistakenly, like that. Okay, so Archan has asked a question: do school counseling take up no suicide contracts? The thing is, no counseling takes up contract. That is the problem. You should always have a contract in a school counseling setup, if you're going to do one-to-one counseling, and it is a very big, huge process. I mean, if it is in the case of generally in a counseling process itself, they will be having a contract, okay, even if it's a group session or a normal session. But if it is a minor issue where you're just going to have an awareness program or something, you don't really need to do a no suicide contract or a counseling contract. Only if it is going to be one-to-one, the client, you should always give them a contract. It is always good on a safer side. Legal document as well, you can always add it to the report documentation that you're going to give, because even in school counseling you have to prepare a case study, whatever case you're going to deal with the particular client. And it is always important that you get an informed consent. One of those factors can be no suicide contract. In the case of smaller children, this may not be necessary. The no suicide contract will not be necessary, and you may need to get the signature from the parent as well. But if it is an older child, like a 12th student, a 10th student, 8th student, something like that, then you can, and the child is very depressed, you are able to identify that, then you should get their written consent and notify the parents, get their consent as well, continue the counseling process. Then. So if you're going to be a school counselor, please do that. Consent from the parents, consent from the child, both should happen. Next question. We have 3 minutes left for 10. Any more questions? Okay, can I have some feedback with regard to the session, so that if you're not having questions, the next session I can try to update my methodology of taking classes for you. I think we have one more session that I'm going to take for you. So if you can give me a feedback, it doesn't have to be necessarily positive, something that needs to be improved, so that the next session I can satisfy that particular thing. So any feedback like that? Any need for changes, you can also mention in the chat. Okay, thank you. Not positive feedback. I want some negative, they call it constructive criticism. It is because if you let me know, I can improve and give you a better output next time. So anything you need specifically.
மேம் அனிதா மேம் அவுட் ஆஃப் டைம் சொல்லிடுங்க.
Yes, Suresh sir. Sir?
மேம் உங்களை vote of thanks கொடுக்க சொன்னாங்க மேம் சார்.
I would like to thank Mr. Deepan for a wonderful session on behalf of the American College, Madurai, and the other organizing committee members. Thank you so much for a wonderful session. There's nothing negative, sir. In 1 hour's time, I think you've covered most of the aspects of the counseling skills. And thank you so much for a wonderful session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. So thank you, everyone. It was really nice today. Hope that everyone can. Yes.
தீபன் நான் வந்து அந்த மூவ்ல இருக்கு, அதனால எதுவும் பண்ண முடியல. Get back to you.
Okay, sir. No problem, sir. Yes, sir. Sure, sir. So yes, I hope next session everyone can turn on your video and maybe கொஞ்சம் interactive-ஆ இருந்தா கொஞ்சம் நல்லா இருக்கும். That is my only request. So
Sure, sir. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, definitely.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. One more minute to ask any questions or give constructive feedback. 10 o'clock, I think full close ஆயிரும். Nothing like that. Okay. சரி, இன்னைக்கு வந்து 1 minute முன்னாடியே முடிச்சுக்கோங்க செஷன். Okay. So bye everyone. See you. Thank you.
Thank you.